The wind came first. December 1884, 8 o'clock, Montana Territory turning cruel. The blizzard rattled the ranch gate hinges like bones in a box. Cal Brennan rode through it, coat crusted white, jaw set against the cold, and the town council's whispers still ringing in his ears. Why is a bachelor millionaire living alone? Unnatural, some say. The iron latch burned his palm when he dismounted. Wood smoke poured from his chimney 100 yards off, thick as wool, the only warm thing in a frozen world. He was reaching for the gate when he saw her. Small figure, threadbare coat, stumbling. She hit the fence and went down. He caught her before the snow did, light as kindling, burning with fever. Her hand clutched a torn scrap of paper, fingers blue at the tips. She looked up, lips cracked, whispered 6 words, "I'm sick, I can't walk. Can I stay one night?" Cal looked at his house, then at the storm. Nowhere to take her, not tonight. By morning, he'd take her somewhere that would turn the whole town against him. He carried her inside. The warmth hit like a wall. Fire crackling in the stone hearth, elk head mounted above, watching with glass eyes. His hands moved without thinking, coat stripped off, wet dress peeled away, wool blankets wrapped tight. 3 years since his wife died, and his body still remembered the motions. How to care for someone fading. The cook, Maria, appeared in the doorway, saw the child, crossed herself. Dios mío! That's the Pritchard girl. Cal looked up from tucking the blankets. You know her? Orphaned last June, living with her uncle. Maria's voice dropped. The banker. He laid his palm on the child's forehead. Hot. Too hot. The thermometer on the bedside table read 103 when he checked. He sent Maria for tea and sat back in the chair, watching the small chest rise and fall. Shallow breaths. Labored. The torn paper had fallen from her hand. He picked it up. Surveyor's marks. Property lines. Numbers he couldn't make sense of in the firelight. He set it on the table beside the bed. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the fire popped and hissed. The kettle began to whistle in the kitchen. Steam and chamomile, the smell of it drifting through the doorway. Maria brought the cup on a tray, her rosary clicking softly at her waist. She said something when I was taking off her boots, Maria whispered. Said Papa said you'd be warm. Cal's hand stilled on the blanket edge. Her father knew me? Don't know, just what she said. And Maria set the tray down. Child needs a doctor. Storm won't let up till morning. We do what we can. He spooned tea between the girl's lips when she stirred. Most of it dribbled onto the pillow. But some went down, her eyes opened once. Pale blue-gray, fever bright. You look like someone, she murmured. Can't remember who. Then she was gone again, drifting. Her breath evened out, and she started to hum, barely audible, a tune that made Cal's spine go cold. His mother's lullaby, the one she'd sung to him and his brother 40 years ago. He sat there until the fire burned low, until Maria brought more wood and rebuilt the flame, until the child's fever dropped to 101 and her color stopped looking like winter itself. Sometime near dawn, he fell asleep in the chair. When he woke, pale blue light filled the room, and the child was sitting up, eating oatmeal Maria had brought. Morning, he said. She looked at him, wary, spoon halfway to her mouth. You're safe here, he added. She nodded, took another bite. The spoon scraped the bowl's bottom, ceramic on ceramic, a small domestic sound that filled the quiet. Outside, the storm had stopped. Just wind now, no snow, boots on the porch, heavy, official. Cal stood, walked to the front door, opened it before the knock came. Marshal Harding stood there, badge catching the light, face apologetic but firm. Cal. Marshal. Got a warrant, welfare check. He held up the paper. County seal. Vernon Pritchard's bank letterhead across the top. Complaint filed yesterday. Says you're holding a ward unlawfully. Cal stepped aside, let him in. Harding's spurs jingled as he walked, tracked mud across the Persian rug. The marshal looked toward the bedroom where Lily sat visible through the open door, spoon still in hand. She was dying in a blizzard, Cal said. You want me to explain that to a judge? I'm not here to argue right or wrong. Harding's voice was low. But Vernon's filed for a guardianship hearing. Judge Wickham arrives in 6 weeks, February 14th. He glanced at Cal. Between us? Vernon's leaned on me before, more than once. Watch yourself. The clock chimed 7. The sound filled the house, brass and wood and time marking itself. 6 weeks, Cal repeated, till Valentine's Day. Harding handed him the warrant paper. Expensive bond stock, the kind Vernon used for official correspondence. You got till then to figure your position, legal position, I mean. He left, door closing soft behind him. Cal stood there holding the paper, feeling its weight. 42 days to establish a right he didn't have, to protect a child who'd stumbled out of a blizzard and into his life like a ghost of something he couldn't name yet. From the bedroom, Lily's voice, small, clear. Are you sending me back? He turned. She was standing now, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, eyes too old for 7 years. Cal folded the warrant, put it in his coat pocket. No, he said, I ain't. But the clock kept ticking, and 6 weeks wasn't long. Sunday came cold. Cal brought Lily to church. She wore one of Maria's old dresses, hemmed up quick with uneven stitches, the fabric bunching at her waist. Too large, but clean. They sat in the back pew. The wood creaked under Cal's weight. Lily folded her hands in her lap like someone had taught her manners once, and she remembered. The church smelled of beeswax and old wood and something else. Stale perfume from the town matrons who filled the front rows. Their hats bobbed like crow wings when they turned to stare, whispering behind gloved hands, not quiet enough. Father Sullivan stood at the altar, thin man, gray hair. He looked at Cal once, then away. The service began. Latin prayers, responses. The congregation's voices rising and falling like wind through pines. Lily didn't know the words, but she moved when others moved. Stood when they stood, sat when they sat. Then came the announcements. Vernon Pritchard rose from the third pew, banker suit, gold watch chain. He turned to face the congregation, and his voice carried. Practiced, smooth, the kind of voice that sold trust for a living. Brothers and sisters, I must address a concern that weighs on my conscience. The whispering stopped. Everyone listened. A child, my own niece, orphaned and vulnerable, has been taken in by a man of means. Vernon's eyes swept the room, found Cal, held. Mr. Brennan's generosity is noted, but we must ask ourselves about propriety. A bachelor, alone, with a young girl. Lily's hand found Cal's. Small fingers, cold. The law exists to protect innocence, Vernon continued. I have filed the necessary papers to ensure this child receives proper family care, with her bloodkin, with those who have a rightful claim. 3 families, in the pews ahead, shifted. Put space between themselves and Cal's row, the message clear. Vernon sat down, satisfied. The organ began the next hymn. Cal felt eyes on him, dozens of them. Judgment without trial. He didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there with Lily's hand in his while the congregation sang about mercy and redemption and things they didn't mean. In the back corner, a woman watched. Chinese seamstress, Rosa Chen, her face unreadable. But when Cal's eyes met hers, she nodded. Once, deliberate. After the service, Cal walked Lily out through the side door, avoided the front steps where Vernon stood shaking hands, accepting sympathy for his burden. The ride home was quiet. Lily stared at the road. Why'd he say those things? She finally asked. Because he can. Are they true? Cal looked at her, 7 years old, already learning how lies work. No, he said, they ain't. 2 days later, Cal stood in Vernon's office. The bank smelled of ink and cigar smoke. Behind the marble counter, a clerk counted coins. The sound of it, metal on metal, rang thin in the high-ceilinged room. Vernon sat at his mahogany desk, papers spread neat, leather chair, everything in its place. Mr. Brennan, good of you to come. Cal removed his hat, stayed standing. Vernon opened a drawer, pulled out a stack of gold certificates, set them on the desk between them. The paper rustled. Expensive bond stock, government-backed. $2,000, more than most men saw in 5 years. I'm a reasonable man, Vernon said. This situation, it's complicated. The girl needs family, real family. I'm prepared to compensate you for your trouble. Cal stared at the money. 2 months of ranch profit, sitting there, easy. Vernon slid a document across the desk. Pre-signed relinquishment form, blank line for Cal's signature. She's worth more than land to you? Vernon's smile didn't reach his eyes. Curious. Most men value assets over sentiment. I ain't most men. Cal's voice was flat. And she ain't an asset. The law sees bachelor guardianship as... Vernon paused, choosing his words. Inappropriate. Judge Wickham shares my concern. You'll lose the hearing, Mr. Brennan. This way, at least you profit from your charity. Behind Vernon, the vault door stood half open, iron, thick. The tumblers clicked as someone inside adjusted the mechanism. Past Vernon's shoulder, Cal could see the secretary, Miss Abernathy, gray bun, 60 if she was a day, standing at the filing cabinet. Her hand shook. A pen slipped from her fingers, clattered to the floor. She didn't bend to pick it up, just stood there, trembling. Cal looked back at Vernon, at the money, at the form. No. Vernon's jaw tightened. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Maybe. Cal put his hat back on. But I'm making it. He turned to leave. Stopped at the door when Vernon spoke again. The law's already on my side. You know that. Cal didn't turn around. Then I reckon I better get used to losing. He walked out. The bell above the door chimed, bright, cheerful, wrong for the moment. Outside, the January wind cut through his coat. He mounted his horse, hands cold on the reins. Behind him, through the bank window, he saw Vernon pull out his pocket watch, open it. The gold case caught the light, something engraved inside the cover. Cal couldn't read it from this distance, but he saw Vernon's lips move. Reading words someone had put there. Words Vernon lived by. The watch snapped shut. Vernon looked up, saw Cal watching, smiled. Cal rode home. The sun was setting, turning the snow orange and gray. The horse's breath came in white clouds. 40 days left until the hearing. 40 days to find something, anything, that would let him keep a child who wasn't his by blood or law or any right he could name, just by the fact that she'd asked, and he'd said yes. That, it turned out, wasn't enough. The general store smelled of burlap and coffee beans, flour sacks stacked against the wall, lye soap in wooden crates. Cal was buying supplies, beans, salt, cornmeal, when Rosa Chin appeared beside him. She didn't look at him directly, just stood there, examining ribbon spools like she was deciding on a color. "Mr. Brennan," her voice was low, careful. "I need to tell you what I seen, before the fever." Cal set down a can of peaches, waited. 3 weeks ago, she came to my shop, asked for thread to mend a torn dress. Rosa's fingers moved over the ribbons, still not meeting his eyes. When she reached for the high shelf, her sleeve pulled up. I saw marks. The store owner, Jenkins, 40 years running the place, paused his sweeping near the back, listening but pretending not to. "What kind of marks?" Cal asked. "Belt buckle. Patterns real specific when metal cuts skin." Rosa finally looked at him. Her wrist bore a scar, old and white, shaped like a brand, and burns, cigar-shaped, on her arm. "That ain't fever, Mr. Brennan." The store went quiet, except for Jenkins' broom, bristles on wood, too loud, in the silence. "She said she fell," Rosa continued. "Children always say they fell. I was 14 when a man burned me with a branding iron for spilling tea. Indentured. Took me 6 years to buy my freedom. I know what cruelty looks like. And I seen it on that child." Cal's hands curled into fists at his sides. "You'd testify to that? In court?" "Yes." Jenkins's broom stopped. He leaned on the handle, face troubled. Older man, balding, kind eyes that had seen too much to stay naive. "Vernon holds a note on this store," Jenkins said quietly. $400, due in March. He looked at Cal. "But my wife, she was friends with Lily's mother, before the fire took her. Sometimes a man's got to choose between his debts and his conscience." Rosa touched the scar on her wrist. "A reminder, a promise." "I'll testify," she said again, "when the time comes." Cal paid for his supplies. Coins on the counter. The sound of it rang different now. Not just metal, but the weight of alliance. Of people choosing sides when choosing meant risk. Outside, the January sun was thin and cold. He loaded the horse, rode home thinking about belt buckles and cigar burns and the kind of man who'd do that to a 7-year-old girl. The kind who'd stand in church and talk about propriety while his hands left marks that wouldn't heal clean. That evening, Lily found him at his desk. The oak surface was covered with papers. Ranch ledgers, cattle counts, expenses tallied in neat columns. The green banker's lamp cast a circle of light that didn't quite reach the corners. "Can I watch?" she asked. Cal looked up. "Ain't much to see, just numbers. Papa used to do numbers. Before bed, he said they told stories if you knew how to listen." Something in Cal's chest tightened. He pulled out the chair beside him. "Sit." She climbed up, small enough that her feet didn't touch the floor. He showed her the entries. This much for feed, this much for vet bills, this much for wages. She leaned close, studying the handwriting. "Why's this different?" Her finger traced a line from years back. Cal looked. The 1878 page. He'd forgotten it was there. The ink darker because it had been written with a different pen, a different hand. "That's old business," he said. But Lily was already reading aloud, slow and careful, sounding out the bigger words. "Thomas Pritchard borrows $500 from Callum Brennan for homestead purchase. Coldwater settlement, payable in 5 years. Her finger stopped. She looked up at him. "Who's Thomas Pritchard?" The fire popped. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. The clock ticked on the mantel, steady, relentless, marking time he didn't have. "Did he pay you back?" Lily asked. Cal's throat was dry. He reached to close the ledger, and that's when he saw it. Between the pages, pressed flat and brown with age. A wildflower, the kind his wife used to pick from the high meadow. The kind she'd pressed in books to save them, to remember. He closed the ledger before Lily could see. The leather cover settled with a soft sound, final. "That's old business, little one." Water under the bridge. Lily nodded, but her eyes stayed on the ledger, curious, already too smart for her own good. "You're teaching me ranch work," she said. "Does that mean I'm staying?" You want to? I don't want to go back to Uncle Vernon's. The way she said it. Flat, matter of fact, like stating a weather report. No fear in her voice because the fear had been buried so deep it didn't show anymore. That's what happened to children who learned early that showing fear made things worse. Cal looked at her. 7 years old, auburn hair catching the lamplight, blue-gray eyes. His brother had been 18 the last time Cal saw him, but the eyes had been the same, that particular shade that ran in the Brennan line. You're staying, Cal said. Until when? Long as you want. Lily's shoulders relaxed. Just a fraction, just enough to notice. Can I learn more numbers tomorrow? You can. She slid off the chair, went to the door, stopped and turned back. Mr. Brennan? Yeah? Thank you for the one night. She paused. And all the nights after. She left. Small footsteps down the hall. The door to her room, used to be the guest room, closing soft. Cal sat alone with the ledger. He opened it again. To the 1878 page. To the wildflower pressed between. To the handwriting that looked like his own but wasn't quite. Rounder, younger. His brother's hand from 15 years ago when they'd still been speaking. When Cal had still had a chance to make things right. He closed the ledger, put it away. But the question stayed. Did he pay you back? Not in money. That had never mattered. The debt that remained was older, deeper, written in silence and pride and years of not saying sorry when sorry might have saved them both. The message came at dusk. Ranch hand Miguel, riding hard, horse-lathered despite the cold. Doc Moss sent word, says come tonight, alone, about the girl. Cal was in the barn, mending tack. Leather and saddle soap, the smell of it thick in the cold air. He set down his tools, wiped his hands. He say why? Just said you'd want to know, before he dies. Doc Moss lived on the edge of town. Small house, medical books stacked on every surface. Bottles of morphine lined up on the shelf like soldiers waiting for orders. The place smelled of carbolic acid and old paper and something underneath. The sweet, sick smell of death, coming slow. Doc answered the door himself, 68 years old and bent with consumption. The cough that took him rattled deep in his chest, blood in the handkerchief he pressed to his mouth. Cal, come in. The fire was low. Doc settled into his chair with the careful movements of a man whose bones hurt. Cal stood, waiting. I delivered that child, Doc said. 7 years ago, December of '77. I knew both parents. Cal's jaw tightened. You asking me something? No, telling you. Doc coughed again, harder. When he pulled the handkerchief away, fresh blood spotted the cloth. Her mother died in childbirth. Hemorrhage, nothing I could do. The father, he came to me after, held his daughter, asked me one thing. The clock on the mantel ticked. Outside, wind pressed against the windows. Asked me not to tell you. Cal went still. Tell me what? That he'd named her Lily Mae, that she had her grandmother's eyes, that he was sorry for 15 years of pride, but not sorry enough to come home. Doc's breath came ragged. Your brother, Thomas, he changed his name to Pritchard when he left. Married a woman from the Flathead Valley. That girl sleeping in your house? She's your niece. The room tilted. Cal reached for the chair back, steadied himself. Thomas is dead, Doc continued. Last June, wagon accident on the mountain road. Brakes failed, coming down the grade. Some say it was worn cable. Some say it was cut. He looked up. Vernon was appointed executor. Had the papers drawn up before the funeral. Why didn't you? Because Thomas asked me not to? Because men make mistakes and live with them and die with them, still unforgiven. Doc's hand shook as he reached for the morphine bottle. I'm telling you now because I got maybe 3 months. Can't take this to the grave. Can't let Vernon steal what's left of your brother's life. Cal's voice came out rough. She doesn't know. No. Thomas never told her about you. Thought he was protecting her from the family that didn't want him. I wanted... Cal stopped. Couldn't finish. I know, but wanting and doing are different things. Your brother left because you got the ranch. Because your father chose you. Because pride's a poison that kills so. Doc coughed, bent double. When he straightened, his eyes were wet. He loved that girl more than anything. Taught her to read by lamplight. Saved every penny for her future. And Vernon's been stealing it piece by piece since the day Thomas died. The clock struck 9. The sound of it hollow. Go home, Doc said. Think about what you're going to do. Because that hearing in February, Vernon knows. He's always known. And he's betting you won't find out in time. Cal left, rode through the dark. The cold air burned his lungs, but he didn't feel it. Didn't feel anything except the weight of 15 years pressing down like a gravestone. He reached the ranch near midnight. Didn't light the lamps. Just sat in the dark front room, still wearing his coat. The fire had died to embers. The house was cold and getting colder. He pulled the old letter from his desk drawer, the one he'd written in 1870 and never sent. The paper was brittle now, yellowed. His own handwriting from when he'd been 37, and his brother 22, and their father freshly dead. Thomas, I'm sorry. Come home. 4 words. He'd written 4 words and thought it was enough. Thought his brother would understand what he couldn't say out loud. That the ranch should have been split. That their father had been wrong. That Cal would have given half of it, would have given all of it, if it meant keeping his brother. But he'd never sent it. Pride or fear or some mix of both, and Thomas had left, changed his name, built a life, had a daughter, died on a mountain road, with worn brakes or cut cable, and no one to ask questions because the banker held the papers. Cal sat there as the room grew colder, as the embers died completely. As dawn light started seeping through the windows, gray and thin, the 1878 ledger entry, Thomas Pritchard borrows $500 for homestead purchase. His brother had come to him once, 6 years after leaving, asked for money to buy land. Cal had given it without question, without asking why Thomas was using a different name, without saying, come home, I'm sorry, please. He'd written the loan in the ledger and watched his brother ride away and told himself it was enough. That money could speak for what pride wouldn't let him say. It hadn't been enough. Nothing had been enough. The ledger was still on the desk. Cal opened it to that page. The wildflower fell out, pressed and brown. His wife had put it there 2 months before she died. Before she'd looked at him with fever-bright eyes and said, you'll be a father again. You'll know by the wildflowers. He'd thought she was delirious, that the fever was talking. Now he understood. His hands shook, his chest hurt like something was breaking open inside. And for the first time since his wife's funeral 3 years ago, Callum Brennan cried. Not quiet, not dignified. The kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and unfinished, for his brother, for 15 years of silence. For a 7-year-old girl who'd stumbled through a blizzard, not knowing she was coming home. He sat there as the sun rose. As the tears dried salt tracks on his face, as the cold ash in the fireplace stopped smoking and went gray, footsteps in the hall, Maria's voice, soft and worried. Mr. Brennan? He couldn't answer. She came closer, saw his face in the morning light, crossed herself. Dios mío, what happened? She's my niece. His voice cracked. My brother's child. And I didn't know. Didn't find out till he was already dead. Maria was quiet for a long moment. Then she touched his shoulder just once. She's here now, she said. That's what matters. A cry from upstairs. Lily, nightmare sharp, frightened. Cal stood, wiped his face, started toward the stairs. Lily was sitting up in bed when he reached her, eyes wide and dark in the dawn light. She grabbed his hand when he sat down beside her. I had a dream, she whispered. Uncle Vernon was in it. He kept saying, the land, over and over. Her fingers dug into his palm. Uncle wants the land. He told Papa once. I heard them fighting before Papa died. Uncle said Papa's land should be his. Said Papa stole it. Cal went cold. When was this? Week before the wagon. Her voice was small, flat. Week before Papa died. Dawn came cold but different. The brutal edge was gone. Cal stood in the barn doorway at 5:30 watching ice crack on the water trough. The sound of it, sharp little pops, meant the worst of winter was breaking. Lily appeared beside him, dressed in borrowed boys' clothes. Too large, sleeves rolled up 3 times. Maria had found them in a trunk somewhere. Ranch hand clothes from years back. You said I could learn, Lily said. Cal nodded. Dawn count, every morning. You got to know your herd. He saddled 2 horses, put her on the gentle mare, showed her how to hold the reins, not too tight, not too loose. They rode out into the half-light, breath steaming white in the air. The cattle were scattered across the winter pasture. Dark shapes against gray snow, 100 head, give or take. Cal stopped at the rise and just sat there, listening. What are we doing? Lily asked. Hearing them. Each cow's got a sound. You learn to read it. The herd lowed and shifted. Low bellows, soft grunts, the sound of animals waking up. That one there. Cal pointed to a big red cow near the fence. She's got a calf coming soon. Hear how she's moaning low? That's discomfort. Couple weeks, maybe. Lily leaned forward in her saddle, listening hard. And that one? She pointed to a smaller cow apart from the herd. What do you hear? It sounds wrong, like hiccups. Cal turned to look at her, then at the cow. Rode over slow. Miguel was already there checking. The ranch hand looked up. Bloat. Caught it just in time. Cal looked at Lily. How'd you know? Papa used to say listening's harder than talking. She paused. Is that why you're quiet all the time? Miguel grinned. She got the ear for it, Bob's. The sun was rising now, gold light on white snow. The air smelled of hay and manure and cold and coffee from Miguel's thermos. Leather creaked as Cal shifted in his saddle. reins cold in his hands. You did good, ooh, he said. Lily sat up straighter, just a little, but enough to see. First time since she'd arrived that she looked like something other than a frightened animal waiting for the next blow. Can I come tomorrow? She asked. Every morning you want. They rode back as the ranch woke up. Smoke from the bunkhouse, horses nickering in the barn. The frozen grass crunched under the hooves, a sound like walking on broken glass. Inside, Maria had breakfast waiting. Eggs and bacon, fresh bread. Lily ate like she'd forgotten food could taste good. Cal watched her and thought about belt buckles and cigar burns and a man who'd do that to his own brother's child. Who'd stand in church and talk about family while stealing everything a dead man had left behind. The priest came after lunch. Father Sullivan, hat in hand, looking older than he had on Sunday. I owe you an apology, he said when Maria let him in. Cal poured coffee, set the cups on the table. They sat in the front room where the light came through the windows and made the dust visible in the air. I stood silent when Vernon spoke, Sullivan continued. That was cowardice dressed as neutrality. You're here now? Yes. And I brought an idea. Sullivan pulled papers from his coat. Parish records. Baptisms, marriages, burials. If we can prove Thomas Pritchard was Thomas Brennan, prove your kin, adoption becomes family reunification. Much stronger legal ground. Cal leaned forward. Church records burned in 81. Local records, yes. But the diocese keeps copies. In San Francisco, I wrote this morning, asked them to search. How long? 4 weeks. Maybe less if the Archbishop prioritizes it. Sullivan's face was grim. You've got 3 weeks till the hearing. The coffee sat steaming between them. Neither touched it. Outside, Lily's voice drifted through the window. She was building something in the snow with Maria. A snowman, maybe? The sound of her laughter was strange and new. What if Vernon's already forged records? Cal asked. Then we pray the diocese archives are honest, and we pray harder that Judge Wickham values truth over paperwork. Sullivan's rosary clicked as he shifted in his chair. The beads rattled soft against the wood. But Cal, you need to understand, even if we prove kinship, Vernon can still argue bachelor unsuitability. He's got money, he's got influence, he's got the law structured in his favor. So what do I have? Sullivan looked toward the window, toward the sound of Lily laughing. You have the fact that she's still alive, still eating, still learning to smile again. He turned back. Sometimes that matters more than law. Sometimes. Cal's hands curled around the coffee cup. The heat of it burned his palms, but he didn't let go. I need more than sometimes. I know. That's why I'm searching. That's why Rosa Chin came to me yesterday, said she'd testify about the marks she saw. That's why Jenkins at the general store told his wife he'd stand witness even if Vernon calls his loan. Sullivan stood, put his hat back on. You're not alone in this, but you need to move fast. And you need to be ready for Vernon to fight dirty. He already is. Then fight dirtier. The priest's eyes were hard. That child deserves better than what the law's about to give her. Sometimes righteous men have to bend rules to serve justice. I'm saying that as a priest who's read too many confessions from men who waited too long to act. He left. The door closed soft behind him. Cal sat alone, with his coffee gone cold, and 3 weeks on the calendar, and a niece who didn't know yet that her uncle was stealing her inheritance one forged document at a time. Through the window, Lily called out, Mr. Brennan, come see. He stood, walked outside. She'd built a snowman, lopsided, smiling, a stick for arms and rocks for eyes, and Maria's old scarf wrapped around its neck. You like it? Lily asked. I do. Can we build one every winter? The question hung in the cold air. Simple. Impossible to answer without lying or breaking her heart. We'll try, he said. It was the best he could offer. And it wasn't enough. Vernon called the meeting for a Thursday night. Emergency town hall. Mandatory attendance, he said. Civic duty. 60 people crammed into the space. Oil lamps smoking on the walls. The air thick with body heat and tobacco spit, and the smell of wet wool from coats hung near the stove. Cal stood in the back. Lily was home with Maria. Safer there. Vernon stood at the front, papers spread on the podium. His gold watch chain caught the lamplight. Everything about him polished, professional. A man who knew how to use respectability like a weapon. Gentlemen, ladies, his voice carried easy. We've allowed sentiment to cloud our judgment. The crowd settled, listening. Mr. Brennan's generosity toward an orphaned child is noted, but we must consider propriety. Mr. Brennan, wealthy, yes, but isolated, unmarried, no experience with children. Vernon tapped the papers. I've received testimony from a ranch hand who wishes to remain anonymous. Troubling testimony. He read from what looked like an affidavit. Handwriting Cal didn't recognize, words that cut clean. Child works before dawn, denied proper education, kept from regular church attendance, subjected to labor, unsuitable for her age and sex. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, heads turning, eyes finding Cal in the back. I'm proposing county orphanage placement, Vernon continued, until the February hearing, to ensure the child's welfare during this delicate legal transition. Cal's hands curled into fists. Splinter from the bench he was gripping bit into his palm. He wanted to stand, wanted to call Vernon a liar in front of everyone. But that's what Vernon wanted, to bait him into public anger, to prove the unstable bachelor narrative. He stayed quiet, jaw set, bleeding dignity, then a chair scraped. Middle of the room, Jenkins, the general store owner, 40 years running his shop, owed Vernon $400, standing anyway. I seen the girl, Jenkins said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Week ago, at my store with Mr. Brennan. She was healthier than I ever saw her before. Asking questions, smiling, that don't look like exploitation to me. His wife, in the row behind, nodded. I knew Lily's mother. Before the fire, that child's mama would want her with someone who sees her as more than an asset. Vernon's face tightened, just a flicker, but Cal saw it. The first crack. With respect, Vernon said, tone hardening, personal impressions don't override legal concerns. We have documentation from an anonymous source, Jenkins interrupted. Real convenient. Can't question someone who won't show their face. The room shifted. Not much, but enough. 5 or 6 people who'd been leaning toward Vernon's side now sitting straighter, uncertain. Vernon's gavel came down, 3 sharp cracks. This meeting is adjourned. The proposal stands. Judge Wickham will make the final determination. His eyes found Cal across the room. Until then, Mr. Brennan, I suggest you prepare for disappointment. The crowd filed out, cold night air rushing in through the open doors. Cal stayed back, letting them pass. Jenkins caught his eye, nodded once. Outside, the February wind had teeth, not the brutal cold of January, but sharp enough. Cal mounted his horse. The leather saddle creaked. His breath came white in the dark. He was halfway home when he heard hooves behind him. Fast, panicked, a rider coming hard through the night. She caught up to him at the ranch gate. Miss Abernathy, Vernon's secretary, 60 years old and riding like the devil was chasing her, which maybe he was. Mr. Brennan? She was breathing hard, shaking. I have to... Cal dismounted, caught her horse's bridle. Easy. You'll kill yourself riding like that. He's going to destroy her. Abernathy's voice cracked, just like he destroyed the others. I won't. Come inside. He got her into the house. Maria appeared, took one look, and brought brandy. Abernathy's hands shook so hard she could barely hold the glass. Cal waited. The clock ticked. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled against the shutters. Finally, she pulled papers from inside her coat. Ledger copies. Pages and pages. The ink still slightly damp from the copying press. 12 years, she whispered. I've worked for him 12 years. Typed every lie. Watched him do this to 6 families. 6 orphaned estates. And I said nothing because I needed the position. Because I told myself it wasn't my business. She spread the papers on the table. Cal leaned over them. Columns of numbers, names, dates, a pattern emerging like a map of systematic theft. Thomas Pritchard's estate, Abernathy said, pointing. Land value $2,400. Cash assets $600. Vernon appointed himself executor. Forged debt documents. Claimed your brother owed him nearly everything. The land went to Vernon. The cash, he embezzled it. $600, just gone. The others? 5 more. Over 8 years, different methods. Same result. Her finger traced down the page. Total, $4,200. All from orphaned children who had no one to question the paperwork. Cal's chest felt tight. Why now? Why tell me now? Abernathy looked up. Her eyes were red, exhausted. Because I found this yesterday. She pulled out one more paper. A train ticket. San Francisco. Departure, February 15th, the day after the hearing. He's planning to run. Regardless of how the judge rules, he's already transferring funds, already arranging his exit. The room went silent, except for the fire. Maria stood in the doorway, rosary clicking soft in her hands. Praying or just holding on to something, hard to tell. I need a witness, Cal said. Someone who saw you give me these. I brought one. Abernathy looked toward the door. Rosa Chen stepped inside. The seamstress, her face calm, resolute. I'm here, Rosa said simply. I'll testify I witnessed this, tonight, midnight. Miss Abernathy bringing evidence of fraud. Abernathy started crying then, quiet, relieved. like she'd been holding her breath for 12 years and could finally let it out. Cal looked at the papers, at the proof of Vernon's crimes laid out in neat columns, at the escape route already planned, at 2 women who'd risked everything to put truth in his hands. "He knows I have these," Abernathy whispered. "By morning he'll know. He'll come for them. For me." "Then you stay here tonight," Cal said. "Both of you. We've got 10 days till the hearing. We use everyone." Rosa touched the old scar on her wrist, the brand mark from her indenture, a reminder of what men with power did when no one stopped them. 10 days, she said. We make them count." Outside, the wind shifted, coming from the south now, warmer, bringing the smell of thaw and mud and spring trying to break through. Change was coming. The only question was whether it would arrive in time. 2 nights later, the screaming started. Cal was in his study, reviewing Abernathy's ledgers by lamplight. Numbers that proved Vernon's pattern. 6 estates, 6 orphans, all of them systematically robbed. He was making notes for the lawyer when he heard it. Lily, upstairs, terror in her voice. He took the stairs 3 at a time, found her sitting up in bed, eyes wide and unseeing, caught in whatever nightmare had its claws in her. Maria was already there, trying to soothe her in Spanish. "No, no, no," Lily was saying, over and over. Uncle said. Cal sat on the edge of the bed, took her hand. It was burning. "Lily, wake up. You're safe." Her eyes focused, found his face. She grabbed his shirt with both fists. "He said I'd go where Mama went." The words tumbled out fast, breathless. "If I told about the papers, if I told anyone Papa hid them. He said Fire's hungry for secrets and Mama burned up and I would too." "Shh. No one's burning. You're here. You're safe." But her fever was climbing. He could feel it through her nightgown, the heat of it unnatural. "Maria, get Doc Moss, now!" She ran. Cal stayed, holding Lily while she shook. She was talking again, half delirious, words spilling out that she'd been holding in for months. "Papa hid the real papers in the well. Before Uncle came, before the wagon. Papa said, if something happens, the truth's in the well. But Uncle burned everything else. Everything. The house, the barn, everything that could tell." Cal's blood went cold. "What papers, Lily?" "The will, the deed, Papa's real deed. Not the one Uncle showed the judge." Her teeth were chattering now. "Uncle Vernon cut the brake cable. I heard him tell someone. Heard him say accidents happen on mountain roads." The room tilted. Cal held her tighter. Doc arrived 20 minutes later, took one look at the thermometer and cursed. 104. "This ain't infection. This is stress manifesting physical." He looked at Cal. "What happened?" "Nightmare about her uncle." Doc prepared a cold compress, camphor oil, willow bark tea, the room filled with the bitter smell of medicine, of desperation. "Mr. Brennan, I'll speak plain. This child needs stability, or she'll fade. The hearing's 9 days out. Can you promise her 9 days? Cal looked at Lily, small and fever-bright and terrified even in sleep now. His brother's daughter, the last piece of Thomas left alive. "I can promise I'll try." Trying ain't enough for a body under this much strain. Doc's hand shook as he packed his bag. 3 months to live, he'd said, maybe less now. She loses this hearing, loses you. I don't know if she'll survive it. That's not medicine talking. That's God's truth. He left. Cal stayed by the bed, watching Lily breathe, shallow, too fast. Her hand found his in her sleep and held on. Papa hid the real papers in the well. Maria appeared in the doorway. "What do you need?" "Miguel, 2 horses. And tell Miss Chen I'm going to need her witness again." They rode at midnight. 3 of them, Cal, Miguel, Rosa, through air that wasn't quite winter anymore, but wasn't spring yet either. The temperature sat just above freezing, sleet mixed with rain, the kind of weather that soaked through everything. The Pritchard homestead sat 5 miles east. What was left of it? Charred timbers, scorched orchard, the apple trees like blackened grave markers against the gray sky. Only one thing stood intact. The stone well. Cal dismounted, lantern in one hand, rope in the other. Miguel tied the rope to his saddle horn. Rosa stood watch, her eyes scanning the darkness for anyone who might have followed. "You sure about this?" Miguel asked. "No." Cal lowered himself into the well, 15 feet down. The walls were slick with ice. His boots scraped against stone. Water at the bottom, shallow but freezing. The lantern light bounced off the walls, making shadows dance. He felt along the stones, looking for, there, a gap. Where one stone had been pulled loose and shoved back in, he wedged his fingers in, pulled. The stone came free. Behind it, a metal box, waterproof, rusted at the seams but intact. "Got it," he called up. Miguel hauled him up, hand over hand. When Cal emerged, he was soaked and shaking, but the box was secure. Rosa took it, wiped the mud off with her sleeve. They opened it right there in the ruins, by lantern light. In the sleet, Inside, papers wrapped in oilcloth, a land deed, a will, a wedding photograph, young man and woman, infant in the woman's arms, and pressed between the pages dried wildflowers, the same kind his wife had pressed, the same kind Lily had picked last week without knowing why. Cal pulled out the photograph, held it close to the lantern. The young man in the picture looked like Cal had looked at 25. Same eyes, same jaw, same expression that said he'd rather work than talk. Thomas, his brother, holding his daughter. Miguel crossed himself. Dios mío. Cal opened the will, read by lamplight. Rain running down his face, or maybe tears, hard to tell. Last will and testament of Thomas Brennan, formerly Pritchard. In the event of my death, guardianship of my daughter, Lily Mae Brennan, shall pass to my brother, Callum Brennan, provided he proves himself worthy. If Vernon Pritchard attempts to claim guardianship, this will serve as evidence of my true wishes. My brother Cal was right about one thing. Blood doesn't make family, choice does. If he chooses her, he's chosen right. The paper shook in Cal's hands. Boss, Miguel's voice was soft. We got what we need? Cal looked at the photograph, at his brother's face, at the will that said worthy like Thomas had always believed Cal could be, even after 15 years of silence. Yeah, he said, we got it. They rode home through the sleet, the tin box secured in Cal's saddlebag, proof that Vernon had lied, that Thomas had known, that blood and choice could be the same thing if a man was brave enough to claim both. 9 days left. And finally, Cal had something stronger than Vernon's forged papers. He had his brother's last words, and they were forgiveness. February 14th, Valentine's Day. The courthouse packed by 8 in the morning, 80 people crammed into a space meant for 40, standing room only, town matrons in the front rows, ranch hands against the back wall, Jenkins and his wife, Father Sullivan in his collar, Doc Moss looking gray and thin, leaning on a cane, Rosa Chen sitting straight back near the aisle, and Vernon Pritchard at the plaintiff's table. Gold watch chain, pressed suit, face calm as a card sharp holding aces. Cal sat across from him, Lily beside him in a new dress Rosa had sewn, blue calico, simple. The child's hands were folded in her lap, knuckles white. Judge Wickham entered, 70 years old. Territorial judge for 30 years, face like carved wood. He settled behind the bench, and the room went silent. We're here on the matter of guardianship. Lily Mae Pritchard, minor child. His voice carried without effort. Mr. Pritchard, you're the petitioner. Make your case. Vernon stood. Paper rustled as he pulled out his prepared statement. Your Honor, this is a matter of propriety and legal fitness. My niece, orphaned tragically last June, requires proper family care. Mr. Brennan's temporary shelter was kind, but kindness doesn't equal qualification. He paced, measured, every word rehearsed. Brennan is 52, unmarried, lives in isolation, has no experience raising children, no wife to provide maternal care, no family structure to support a young girl's development. Vernon gestured to his papers. I present testimony suggesting the child works before dawn, misses educational opportunities, and is kept from proper social interaction. Murmurs in the courtroom. Wickham's gavel came down once. Furthermore, Vernon continued, I am her blood uncle, executor of her father's estate. The law favors family placement. I have the means, the moral fitness, and the legal standing to raise this child properly. He sat down, confident. Cal's lawyer stood, young man from Helena, $340 raised by ranch hands to pay his fee. He wore a suit that didn't quite fit and carried a satchel stuffed with papers. Your Honor, may I present evidence? Wickham nodded. The lawyer pulled out Rosa's sworn statement. Read it clear and careful. Belt buckle marks, cigar burns. A 7-year-old child coming to a seamstress shop with injuries she called accidents. Rosa stood, when called, walked to the witness chair. Her voice was steady. I seen the marks myself, Your Honor. I was indentured once. 14 years old. A man burned me for spilling tea. She showed her wrist, the old brand scar white against her skin. I know what cruelty looks like. I seen it on that child before Mr. Brennan took her in. Vernon's lawyer objected. Hearsay, unverified. I got eyes, Rosa said. That ain't hearsay. The judge made a note. Continue. Doc Moss took the stand next. Moved slow. Every breath and effort. I examined the child December 20th. Pneumonia, fever of 103, malnourished. Bruising consistent with repeated physical punishment. He coughed into his handkerchief. I examined her again last week. Healthy weight gained, no new injuries, pneumonia resolved. That child is thriving under Mr. Brennan's care. Objection, Vernon's lawyer said. The doctor's opinion on thriving is subjective. It's medical fact, Doc snapped. 10 pounds gained in 6 weeks. Fever gone. Color returned. That's objective as sunrise. Wickham nodded. Noted. The lawyer presented Abernathy's ledgers. Every page, every forged document, 6 orphaned estates. $4,200, embezzled over 8 years. The courtroom went quiet. Real quiet. The kind that comes when people realize they've been watching a thief wear respectability for years. Vernon's face didn't change, but his hand went to his pocket watch, clicked it open, closed, open, closed. Then Father Sullivan approached, held up a letter, diocese seal at the top. Baptism record from San Francisco Archives, dated December 1877. He read aloud. Lily May, daughter of Thomas Brennan and Sarah Brennan, née Running Bear. Cal's heart stopped. Thomas Brennan, Sullivan repeated, younger brother of Callum Brennan, changed his name to Pritchard following a family dispute in 1870. He handed the letter to the judge. Wickham read it, looked at Cal, at Lily, back at the letter. Mr. Brennan, the judge said slowly, you're telling me this child is your niece? Yes, Your Honor. Didn't know it myself till a week ago. My brother and I, we had a falling out. 15 years of silence. He died last June. Never told me he had a daughter, and Mr. Pritchard knew this. Cal's lawyer pulled out the tin box from the well, set it on the table, opened it. Thomas Brennan's will, Your Honor, found in the stone well at the burned homestead, hidden there before his death. It names Callum Brennan as guardian. Explicitly states Vernon Pritchard should not have custody. The courtroom erupted, voices raised. Wickham's gavel came down hard, 3 times. Order. Silence fell, heavy, waiting. Wickham looked at Vernon. You knew Thomas Pritchard was Thomas Brennan? Vernon's jaw tightened. The records were unclear? Did you know? Yes. The word fell like a stone in still water. And you forged documents claiming intestate succession, claiming you were the sole heir, Vernon said. Nothing. His lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client. Sit down. Wickham's voice was ice. He looked at the packed courtroom, at the evidence spread across the table. Before I rule, I want to hear from the child. Miss Lily, approach the bench. Cal's hand tightened on Lily's shoulder. She stood, small, 7 years old in her blue dress. Walked to the front like she was walking to the gallows. Wickham's voice gentled. I'm going to ask you some questions. You tell me the truth. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Did your Uncle Vernon hurt you? Lily's hands twisted together. Yes, sir. How? Her voice came out flat, practiced, like reciting something she'd learned to say without feeling. Belt when I was too slow with chores. Cigar burns when I talked back. Locked in the root cellar overnight when I cried for Papa after he died. She paused. He said crying was weakness, said Papa left me because I cost too much to feed. The courtroom was silent. Vernon's face had gone pale. Did he ever threaten you? Wickham asked. Yes, sir. Said if I told anyone about Papa's papers, about the real will Papa wrote, I'd go where Mama went. Mama died in a fire. I knew what he meant. And Mr. Brennan, has he hurt you? No, sir. What does he do? Lily looked back at Cal. Something in her face softened. He teaches me things. Ranch work, numbers, listening to the cattle. He doesn't yell when I get it wrong. He just shows me again. As her voice wavered. He makes me feel like I'm not too expensive to keep. Wickham's expression didn't change, but his hand tightened on the gavel. You can sit down, child. Lily walked back. Cal stood before she reached him, walked to the front, the whole courtroom watching. He pulled something from his vest pocket. A pressed flower, brown with age, fragile. Your Honor, I need to say something. Wickham nodded. Cal held the flower up to the light from the windows. Spring sun coming through, warm on his face. My wife died 3 years ago. Childbirth. Baby didn't make it. His voice was rough. Before she passed, she looked at me and said, You'll be a father again. You'll know by the wildflowers. He looked at Lily. I thought she was delirious, fever talking. But last week, this child, my brother's child, who I didn't even know existed, she picked this same flower, didn't know what it meant, didn't know my wife used to press these exact ones. His hand shook. The flower trembled. I failed my brother, 15 years of pride and silence. He died, thinking I didn't want him, thinking I chose land over family. Cal's voice cracked. I can't fix that, can't bring him back, can't tell him I'm sorry. He looked at the judge. But I can choose his daughter, can raise her right, can show her that family isn't just blood, it's who you'd ride through a blizzard for, who you'd fight a whole town for, who you'd choose every morning, even when choosing's hard. He set the flower on the judge's bench. My wife was right. I'm a father again, and I know it by the wildflowers. I'm asking this court to let me keep choosing. Let me be what my brother needed me to be 15 years ago. The courtroom was silent. Cal walked back to his seat, sat down. Lily's hand found his, held tight. Wickham looked at the flower, at the tin box, at the ledgers, at Vernon sitting rigid at his table. Marshall Harding, The marshal stepped forward. Arrest Vernon Pritchard. Charges of fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and child endangerment hold impending territorial prosecution. Vernon stood. Your Honor, You forged estate documents. You embezzled from orphans. You abused your own niece. Wickham's voice was stone. You have the right to a trial. But you don't have the right to this child. Harding moved behind Vernon. The handcuffs clicked. That sound, metal on metal, rang through the courthouse like a bell. As for guardianship, Wickham continued, I'm granting full adoption and legal custody to Callum Brennan. Miss Lily Mae Brennan, he emphasized the name, welcome to your legal family. The gavel came down. Final. The marshal led Vernon down the courthouse steps, handcuffs gleaming in the February sun. The crowd parted, 80 people watching in silence as the banker who'd held their mortgages and counted their money walked past in chains. Vernon's face was rigid, trying to maintain dignity. But his foot caught on the third step. He stumbled, nearly fell. Harding caught his arm and steadied him without comment. At the bottom of the steps, something fell from Vernon's coat pocket. A paper. It landed in the mud. Jenkins bent down, picked it up. His face went pale. Train ticket, he said loudly. San Francisco. Tomorrow's date. The crowd pressed closer, looking, seeing. Vernon had been planning to run. Win or lose the hearing, he was already gone in his mind. Already counting the money he'd stolen. Already erasing himself from the territory like he'd never existed. You knew, someone said from the crowd. Old woman, Baker's wife. You knew you'd lose and you were going to run anyway. Vernon said nothing. Harding kept walking. Toward the jail 2 blocks east, the crowd followed, not threatening, just watching, bearing witness to the end of something they should have seen coming years ago. Cal stood on the courthouse steps with Lily, her hand in his, small and warm and alive. Jenkins approached, hat in hand, his wife beside him. We should have spoken sooner, Jenkins said. Town owes you an apology. Owed you one 6 weeks ago when we chose comfort over truth. You spoke when it counted, Cal said. Barely, and late. Jenkins looked at Lily. Miss Lily, I'm sorry we let fear keep us quiet. Your mama would have wanted better from us. Lily nodded, silent, still learning how to accept apologies from adults who'd failed her. Mrs. Jenkins knelt down, eye level with the child. Your mama was my friend, before the fire. She'd come to the store, and we'd talk about books and gardens and raising daughters, right? Her voice cracked. I should have looked after you when she couldn't. I'm sorry I didn't. Lily's eyes filled, first tears since the hearing started. She talked about you. Said you made the best bread in Montana. Mrs. Jenkins smiled, crying too now. I'll teach you the recipe, if you want. Your mama never got to learn it. I'd like that. The town matrons approached next, 3 of them. The ones who'd whispered loudest in church, who'd turned their families away from Cal's pew, who'd judged without knowing. The eldest spoke. Mrs. Hartwell, 70 if she was a day, spine straight as a rifle barrel. Mr. Brennan, we were wrong. We let a man's reputation blind us to a child's suffering. She looked at Lily. We're organizing a welcome dinner, Sunday after next. Proper introduction to the community. If you'll accept. Cal looked at Lily. Your choice. Lily studied the women, reading their faces, learning to tell genuine remorse from performance. Finally, she nodded. Okay. Rosa Chin came down the steps. She'd been sitting in the courtroom through everything, silent witness. Now she put her hand on Lily's shoulder. You got people now, Rosa said quietly. Real people. Not just one man trying to save you. A whole town learning to do better. Inside the jail, visible through the barred window, Vernon sat on a cot. Marshal Harding was emptying his pockets. Systematic. Official. He pulled out a leather wallet, counted the bills inside. $1,800, Harding called through the door. Cash. You always carry this much, Vernon? No answer. Thought not. Harding made a note. Restitution starts here. Father Sullivan rang the church bells. 10 strikes. Not for a service. Not for a death. Just for the fact that justice had finally shown up 6 years late and tired but still standing. The sound rolled across the valley, clear and bright. Spring sun, warm on the steps. Ice melting in the gutters. Water running toward the creek. Cal looked at Lily. You ready to go home? She considered the question. Really thought about it. Is it home now? For real? For real. Then yes. They rode out. Miguel had the wagon waiting. Maria, in the back with food she'd packed. Rosa climbed up beside her. Father Sullivan rode his own horse, staying close. Doc Moss had already gone, too tired to make the trip back. But he'd smiled at Cal on the way out. A smile that said you did it. The ride home took an hour. Slow, easy. No rush anymore. The road was mud and melting snow. The kind of mess that meant winter was dying and spring was winning. Crocuses pushed up through the snow along the fence line. First flowers, purple and yellow against white. Lily saw them and pointed. Look, like the one you showed the judge. Different kind, Cal said. But same idea, life coming back. When they reached the ranch, a surprise waited. 20 people, maybe more. Ranch hands, town families, all of them holding tools, hammers, saws, rope, wood stacked in wagons. Miguel's wife approached. We're rebuilding the Pritchard place. Your place, Miss Lily. The homestead your papa left you. Figure it's time it looked like home again, instead of grief. Lily's mouth opened, closed, no words. It's yours, Cal explained. The land, the house we'll build. It's held in trust till you're 21. But it's yours, your inheritance, what your papa wanted you to have. But I live with you now. You do, and you always will, long as you want. But that land, that's your papa's gift, your legacy. We're going to honor it. They rode out together, all of them. A caravan of wagons and horses and people who'd decided guilt was best transformed into action. The Pritchard homestead looked different in the spring light. The charred timbers, less like a graveyard, more like something waiting to be remade. The apple orchard's burned trunks had tiny green shoots at the base, life trying again. The men started clearing, hauling burned wood away, digging new foundation lines. The women brought food, set up tables, made it a gathering instead of just work. Lily wandered through the ruins, careful, looking. She found it near where the house had stood. A toy, wooden horse, scorched black on one side, but still recognizable. Small enough to fit in her palm. She brought it to Cal. Papa made this. When I was 4, I thought it burned. Cal took it, turned it over. Simple carving, done with love and a dull knife. The kind of thing a father makes when he's trying to give his daughter the world, but only has wood and time. We'll keep it safe, Cal said. Can you make me another one, so I have 2? He looked at her, 7 years old, learning to ask for things instead of assuming she'd lose them. Yeah, I can do that. And that night, back at the ranch, he did. Sat at his workbench in the barn with a piece of pine and his carving knife. Maria brought coffee. Miguel brought the lantern closer. Rosa sat in the corner mending, just keeping him company. By midnight, he had it. Rough. Not as good as Thomas's had been, but honest work. He sanded it smooth and brought it inside. Lily was still awake, reading by candlelight in her room. Thought you'd be sleeping, he said. Too much happened today. My brain won't stop. He handed her the horse. She took it, turned it over, set it beside the scorched one on her bedside table. Now I got both, she said. One from Papa, one from you. She looked up at him. Something in her face, uncertain, hopeful. Can I call you something instead of Mr. Brennan? What feels right? She was quiet for a long time, then soft. Papa Cal? His throat closed. He nodded, couldn't speak. She smiled, small, real. The kind of smile that meant she was starting to believe safety could last. Good night, Papa Cal. Good night, Lily May. He closed the door, stood in the hallway. Maria was there. She'd heard. She crossed herself and whispered something in Spanish that sounded like a prayer of gratitude. Spring came in hard after that. The kind that washed winter away in a week. Snow melted. Creeks ran high. The valley turned from white to brown to green so fast it felt like watching something be born. By April, the homestead had walls, a roof, windows that Rose's friend the glazier installed at cost. Not big, not fancy, but solid. A house that would stand. They planted the apple orchard on a Saturday. 15 saplings. Miguel and his sons dug the holes. The town families brought cuttings from their own trees. Jenkins donated 3 trees from his own land. So your papa's orchard doesn't just come back, Jenkins said. It grows bigger, better, connected to all of us. Lily helped plant the first one, her hands in the soil beside Cal's. The earth was rich and dark and smelled like things growing, like potential. This one's for Mama, Lily said. Since she didn't get to see me grow up, now I can watch this tree grow up instead. They planted them all by sunset, 15 trees in straight rows, the beginning of something that would outlive all of them. At the burned cabin site, where Thomas's house had stood, they planted one more, different from the others. A wildflower garden, the kind Cal's wife had loved, the kind Lily had picked without knowing, purple and yellow and white. Mixed seeds that would come up every year without asking. For the people we lost, Cal said, and the family we chose. Lily knelt beside him, her dress muddy, her face smudged with dirt, happy. I think they'd like that, she said. The sun set golden orange, painting the valley, the mountains, the new house with its fresh-cut lumber, the apple trees small and fragile but alive. Cal looked at his niece, his daughter now, legal and chosen, and thought about his brother. About 15 years of silence. About how Thomas had been right in that will. Blood doesn't make family. Choice does. He'd spent 15 years choosing isolation, choosing pride, choosing safety over risk. Now he was choosing different. Every morning, every time Lily called him Papa Cal, every time the town showed up with food or help or just company, it was harder than isolation. It hurt more, required more, but it was living instead of just surviving. And that, he was learning, made all the difference. 3 years later, spring of 1888, Lily was 10 years old and reading ranch ledgers like she was born to it. She sat at Cal's desk, her desk now, half the time, tallying cattle sales and feed costs with the careful precision her father had taught her. Thomas would have been proud. Cal told her so regular enough that she'd started to believe it. The apple orchard at the old homestead bore fruit that fall. Not much, just enough. 15 trees, heavy with small red apples that tasted like promise. They'd made cider, sold some, given most away. Jenkins said it was the best he'd ever tasted, and his wife cried when she drank it because it tasted like her friend who'd died in the fire. Vernon Pritchard died in territorial prison in 1887, consumption. Same thing that took Doc Moss 3 months after the hearing. Lily didn't attend Vernon's funeral. Instead, she planted wildflowers on Thomas's grave, purple and yellow, the kind that came back every year without permission. Sunday dinners rotated between the ranch and town families now, 12 regulars, sometimes more. The house that had been silent for 3 years filled with voices and laughter and the sound of people who'd learned that family was something you built, not just something you were born into. Rose's seamstress shop was thriving. Cal had invested $500 as silent partner. She'd paid him back in 2 years and kept sending quarterly dividends anyway. Said it was interest on the trust he'd shown when trust was expensive. Miss Abernathy opened a bookkeeping school for young women, teaching them honest accounting, teaching them that numbers could tell the truth if the person holding the pen chose truth over profit. She had 6 students, all of them daughters of farmers and ranchers who wanted their girls to know how to read a contract before signing it. Father Sullivan's new church was built. Cal had donated the lumber. Lily helped paint. Her handprints were still visible on the back wall where she'd gotten more paint on herself than the boards. The priest said he'd never paint over them, said they reminded him that children's hands built the kingdom better than old men's guilt ever could. Cal thought about that a lot, about how he'd spent 15 years thinking isolation kept him safe from loss, how all it really did was keep him from living. Reckon I was wrong about safety, he'd told Miguel one evening. Thought if I didn't let anyone close, couldn't lose them. But that ain't safety, that's just slow dying. Miguel had nodded. You're living now, boss. That's what matters. And he was. They all were. The dawn cattle count was Lily's favorite part of the day. She rode beside Cal every morning now, confident in the saddle, reading the herd by ear like she'd been born knowing how. This particular April morning, the air was warm for the first time since October, the smell of wet earth and new grass. Cherry blossoms drifting from town across the valley like snows opposite. They sat on the rise, watching, listening. Papa Cal, Lily said. What's that sound? She pointed toward the meadow. A bird calling, high and clear. Killdeer, Cal said. Means spring's here to stay. She smiled. 10 years old and already learning that seasons changed. That winter didn't last forever. That things could grow back after burning if you gave them time and tending. They rode toward the sunrise. 2 silhouettes against gold light, the cattle lowing peaceful behind them. Creek running high with snowmelt. Birds calling the day awake. Cal thought about his brother. About the will that said, if he chooses her, he's chosen right. About how Thomas had forgiven him before Cal even knew he needed forgiving. About how family wasn't who you were born to, but who you'd ride through a blizzard for. Who you'd face a town's judgment for. Who you'd choose every morning, even when choosing was hard. Dust won't settle on a man's conscience if he keeps moving forward. And they kept moving, together.